I'm not the kind of guy who scares easily. I've spent half my life camping, hiking, hunting, you name it. I grew up in Montana, where being out in the woods was just part of existing. I know the sounds the forest makes, what animals move like, and how to tell when something's wrong. But what happened to me last fall in the Black Hills of South Dakota? None of that prepared me for it. This story isn't exaggerated. It isn't a creepypasta. It's just what happened, and I still can't explain it. I had a week off work in mid-October, and I wanted to spend it alone on the Black Elk Trail. It's a lesser-known loop off the main Centennial Trail, about 70 miles of rough, unmarked forest, steep ridges, and old mining routes. Perfect solitude. My plan was simple: park my truck at a trailhead near Keystone, hike the full loop solo over 8 or 9 days, then end up back where I started. I packed light but smart: tent, stove, rifle, GPS beacon, extra socks, the usual. The first few days went perfectly. The weather was crisp, the nights were quiet except for wind moving through the pines. Every morning I woke up to that soft blue fog hanging between the trees, made some instant coffee, and kept moving. I only saw 2 other people the whole time, both heading in the opposite direction. It was the 4th night when things changed. I'd made camp a few miles off trail, next to a shallow stream. The sun had just dipped behind the ridge, and I was cooking some dehydrated chili when I heard something that made my skin crawl. It was faint, distant, but clear enough to recognize. Whistling. 2 notes, high and then low. At first, I thought maybe it was another hiker somewhere nearby, but there were no other camps around. I checked the GPS. I was miles from any road or marked trail. The whistling stopped after maybe 10 seconds. I figured it was the wind or a bird and brushed it off. Then, around midnight, it started again. Same 2 notes, same direction, from the woods to the north. I unzipped the tent and shined my flashlight around. Nothing but trees and fog. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I packed up and started moving fast. I told myself I'd camp somewhere closer to the main trail. A few hours in, I stopped to rest and realized my multi-tool was missing. I always keep it in the same pocket of my pack, clipped to the zipper. Gone. Later that afternoon, I reached for my lighter. Also gone. Then I noticed one of my extra socks missing from the line I'd hung on my pack to dry. I started feeling that creeping anxiety, the kind that gets under your skin and doesn't go away. I checked my gear over and over, convinced I'd just misplaced things. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. Someone, or something, had been in my camp. That night, I set up camp near a rocky outcrop. It gave me some elevation and a decent view of the woods below. I built a small fire and kept my rifle within arm's reach. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Not even crickets. Around midnight, I heard a branch snap. I froze. Then came slow, deliberate footsteps, crunching leaves, one at a time, circling the edge of my firelight. I shouted, "Who's out there?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. I held the rifle, waiting, every muscle in my body tensed. Then, from just beyond the firelight, I saw it. A pale shape between the trees. It looked like a person, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, and it was standing perfectly still. I raised my flashlight, but the moment the beam hit the trees, it was gone. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat there until sunrise, staring at the edge of the clearing. The next morning, I decided to head back toward civilization. I didn't care about finishing the loop anymore. About an hour into the hike, I started noticing something weird on the ground. Small piles of stones, each one perfectly stacked 3 high, sitting right in the middle of the trail. They weren't there the day before. Every few hundred feet, another pile. At first, I thought they might have been left by another hiker, but then I saw something that made me stop cold. One of the piles wasn't made of stones at all. It was made of teeth. Small, yellowed teeth. Animal, maybe, but I didn't stick around to find out. That's when I heard it again. The whistle. This time, it was closer. By the 6th day, I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days. I was moving fast, trying to get back to my truck before dark. The forest felt wrong. The trees all looked the same, and I kept losing my bearings even though I was following the GPS. That afternoon, it started raining. I pulled my hood tight and kept going until I saw something ahead on the trail. A tarp. At first, I thought it was a campsite, but when I got closer, I realized it was my tarp. The same one I'd packed up 2 days ago. It was spread out neatly across the ground, with my missing multi-tool sitting in the middle. That's when I saw movement. A shape slipping behind a tree about 30 feet away. I didn't wait. I bolted down the trail, heart pounding, rain blurring everything. I could hear footsteps behind me, light and fast. Not running, following. The forest started to thin, and for a second I thought I was safe. Then I glanced over my shoulder. Something was standing at the edge of the trees. Tall, pale, no clothes, no face. Just a smooth, blank shape where the head should have been. And it was tilting, side to side, slow and deliberate. Then it raised one arm, impossibly long, and pressed a finger where its mouth should have been. Silence. The next thing I remember is stumbling out of the woods and collapsing on the trailhead road. I must have passed out, because when I woke up it was early morning. My truck was still there, frost on the windshield. I got in, locked the doors, and drove until I saw another person. When I told the ranger what happened, he gave me that polite, city guy losing it in the woods look. But when I mentioned the stacked stones and the teeth, he stopped writing. He said,
"You were off the Black Elk Loop, right?"
I nodded. He sighed.
"We've had a few odd reports from hikers around there lately. Strange noises, missing gear. We've checked it out, but we never find anything."
He told me to take a few days, get some rest. I did, but the nightmares haven't stopped since. That was a year ago. I haven't been camping since. I tried once, packed the truck, drove out to the Bitterroots, but I couldn't do it. Prepare yourself, because what I'm about to tell you has taken away my peace for years. I'm not sharing this for attention. I just need to get it out, because I can't tell anyone in person. This all started back in 2022. I had just bought my first home, a modest 2-story cabin-style place on the edge of a small Oregon town called Timberline Ridge. If you drive 15 minutes past Main Street, the houses thin out until you hit the tree line, and from there it's just miles of deep forest. My property literally backs up to that forest, dense, endless, silent. I loved it at first. I work remotely as a web designer, and I liked the idea of having peace and quiet. My nearest neighbor, an older guy named Rick, lived about half a mile down the gravel road. He warned me when I moved in.
"You'll hear things out there you can't explain. Don't go looking for them."
I laughed it off. Winter started off peacefully. I spent my days working and my nights sitting on the porch with a beer, listening to the wind. But around February, weird things started happening. One morning, I went out to start my truck and noticed a small wooden figurine sitting on my hood. It was carved from some kind of dark bark, shaped like a human figure with no face. I figured it was some kind of joke, maybe a kid from down the road trying to mess with the new guy. I tossed it into the trash and didn't think much of it. But 2 days later, there was another one. This time it was sitting on the step of my front porch, perfectly centered like someone had measured it. I checked my security camera. Nothing. The footage skipped from 1:13 a.m. to 1:46 a.m., like it had glitched. I'd installed that system myself. It doesn't glitch. That night I left the porch light on. I even slept on the couch facing the front window. Around 2 a.m., I woke up without knowing why, just that feeling you get when something's off. The porch light was flickering, and for a second I thought I saw movement near the tree line. Just a shadow crossing between the pines. I convinced myself it was a deer and went back to sleep. A week later it snowed. Heavy, wet snow that stuck for days. The next morning, I stepped outside and froze. There were footprints leading from the woods straight to my back deck. Bare feet. No shoes, no socks, just the outline of toes pressed into the snow. The prints stopped at my back door and then turned around, heading back into the trees. They were smaller than mine, maybe a woman's or a teenager's. But who the hell walks barefoot through snow in sub-zero weather? I called Rick. He came over, took one look, and said,
Don't follow them.
I asked him what that was supposed to mean. He just shook his head and said,
They always come back if you go looking.
That night, I dragged my work desk upstairs and kept my rifle beside me. The next morning, the footprints were gone, covered by new snow. But there was another figurine. This one was nailed to my fence post with a rusted nail. By March, I'd stopped sleeping. Every night around the same time, 1 a.m., I'd hear whistling from the woods. Not a tune I recognized, but a slow, low, two-note pattern, like someone calling a dog. At first, I tried to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I stepped out one night with a flashlight. The sound stopped instantly. I shined the light across the trees. Nothing. Then, just as I turned to go back inside, the whistling started again. This time closer. I ran inside, locked the doors, and shut every curtain in the house. I didn't sleep that night, or the next one. Finally, after 3 nights of it, I called the sheriff's office. They sent a deputy, a guy named Carter, to check it out. He walked the property, looked at the fence, checked the woods for signs of anyone camping. He found nothing. "You sure it's not some animal?" he asked. "Animals don't whistle," I said. He gave me a polite smile and said he'd file a report, but there wasn't much else they could do. That night, I sat in my living room with every light off, rifle in my lap. I was determined to see whatever it was. At exactly 1:17 a.m., the whistling began again. But this time, it was coming from inside the tree line, maybe 30 feet out. I raised my rifle, aiming at the dark. Then, something stepped forward. It was a person, or at least it looked like one. Completely naked, skin pale gray under the porch light. It was thin, almost skeletal, and it moved in this jerky, unnatural way, like every joint was bending wrong. I froze. The thing tilted its head at me, then let out that same two-note whistle. But this time, I could see its mouth barely opened when it did. The sound didn't match the movement. It was like the whistle was coming from somewhere else. I fired a shot. The flash blinded me for a second, and when I looked again, it was gone. The next morning, I found the bullet lodged in a tree trunk about 20 yards out, but there were steps in the snow leading deeper into the forest. I called Rick. He came with his hunting rifle. Against my better judgment, we followed the trail. It went on for maybe half a mile before ending at a small clearing. There, in the center, was something that made my stomach drop. Dozens of those same carved figurines were hanging from the branches with pieces of string. Beneath them, arranged in a perfect circle, were animal bones. Deer, maybe. Rick muttered something under his breath and turned around.
"We're leaving,"
he said. We didn't speak the whole way back. When we reached my yard, he told me,
"You need to move. Soon."
For a while, things were quiet. I stopped hearing the whistling. No footprints, no figurines. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then summer came. One night in July, I was sitting on the porch after midnight, scrolling through my phone. The woods were dead quiet. No crickets, no wind, just silence. Then I heard it again, that same two-note whistle. I froze. The sound came from the direction of the clearing. I went inside, locked every door, turned off the lights, and waited. The whistling continued for maybe 5 minutes before stopping. When I finally got the nerve to peek out the window, I saw movement near the edge of my property. Someone, or something, was standing just behind the fence. I could only see the outline, but it was tall, too tall, and it was holding something. When lightning flashed, for half a second I saw what it was holding. A wooden figurine, carved into the shape of a man holding a rifle. The next morning, I packed a bag and drove straight into town. I stayed at a motel for a few nights, then started renting an apartment in Portland. I haven't gone back to that house since. A few months later, I got a call from the realtor who was handling the property for me. She said someone had broken in. When the police went to check, they found every wall of the house covered in carved figures, hundreds of them. They didn't take anything, they just left them there. The cops never found who did it. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints. The case went nowhere. The other night, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single wooden figurine, small, dark, faceless, and carved into the bottom, barely visible, was my name. Appreciate you staying till the end. If you enjoyed it, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which story made you think twice about going into the woods, and why.